The second reading is from James, the first chapter. Every generous act of giving, with every perfect gift, is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. In fulfillment of his own purpose, he gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we would become a kind of first fruits of his creatures. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. Therefore, rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness, and welcome with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. But be doers of the word, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those who look at themselves in a mirror. For they look at themselves, and on going away immediately forget what they were like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. If any thinkers they are religious, they do not bridle their tongues, but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the word. Here ends the reading.
The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark from the 7th chapter. Now when the Pharisees and some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus, they noticed that some of his disciples were eating with defiled hands, that is, without washing them. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they thoroughly wash their hands, thus observing the tradition of the elders. And they do not eat anything from the market unless they wash. And there are also many other traditions that they observe, the washings of pots, of cups, and bronze kettles. So the Pharisees and scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not live according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands?" And Jesus said to them, "Isaiah prophesied rightly about you hypocrites. As it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. You abandon the commandment of God and hold to human tradition." Then he called the crowd again and said to them, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand. There's nothing outside a person that by going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile. For it is written, for it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come: fornication and theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, licentiousness, envy, slander, pride, folly. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person." The Gospel of the Lord. Wow, you were a little stronger on that praise to you, O Christ, than they were last night. It was, it's not very happy gospel today, is it? As a matter of fact, I opened the newspaper this morning and saw the editorial from Robbie Ketchum. Cindy, would you light the candles? We didn't light the candles this morning. God is still here. Thanks, Marcia. I opened the newspaper, and as I opened the newspaper and looked, Robbie Ketchum had written an editorial. If you haven't read it, he's the pastor out at Bethlehem and St. Mark's on the Ridge. Excellent article, and it's timely that we should hear this. So many of us look to the Scriptures as something moralistic, as some kind of moral compass for us. I've even heard of churches who concentrate on moral maturity. Nothing could be farther from the gospel and the culture that Jesus brings with him. I say nothing could be farther from because how many years ago was it that we looked upon people who got divorced and thought they were the worst people in the world? And now, today, we accept people who are divorced and we say, these people are children of God just like you and me. Morals have changed. Morals change from generation to generation. And Jesus is looking at these Pharisees who have made up these moralistic traditions. Why do you not do this? Why do you not do that? So they can point their fingers. But then think about it again. The Pharisees do have the best interests of the people at heart. They do want the people to be good, God-fearing people. They do want the people to be the kind of people that everyone will look at and they will say, look at that person, ask them what God they follow. We want to follow that same God. So they do have good intentions. They have these wonderful intentions to teach the people, but you know what they're doing? They're taking those intentions and they're saying these are from God. And really, they're from their own hearts. We do the same things, don't we? We do the same things all the time. Why do you not have First Communion instead of allowing all the children to come and have communion? That's quite moralistic of us, isn't it? It's tradition. It's just a tradition. Why do we dip instead of drink the little cups? Tradition. It's all tradition. What difference does it make if we receive the body and blood of Christ? What difference does it make if we use a little clamshell to pour a little bit of water on the baby's heads, or a rose to dip in the water and drop a few drops on the baby's heads, or to stick your hand in and get the whole congregation wet? What difference does it make? The difference it makes is, how does it point to God? How does it remind us of God? How does it remind us of God's promises? You see, everything that we're about in this space right here, everything should reflect Jesus. Everything that we do should be a reminder of how God is working in the world. And as we go from this place, we can go from here and we can say, you know what? I encountered God this week, and I can walk through the rest of my week to work, to all of the different places that I go to shop. I can go throughout the world. I could even go to China or to Africa or anywhere else, and I can remind people that God is present in the world because I have encountered God. And it's not because of the traditions. Sometimes it's in spite of. But it's because God has chosen to be present to us. And I think Jesus is really trying to help the Pharisees. I don't think he hates them. I think he's trying to say to them, you know what, guys? You're getting it all wrong. You've got everything messed up. Everything is backwards. You're making everybody be these good people, and they can't do it. You're telling them, don't lie, don't cheat, don't murder, don't do this, don't do that. And you give them all these lists, and it's just impossible. You're breaking their backs. Why don't we start this way? God loves you. God cares for you. God is present with you every day. And because of that, now things start to change in my life. Now I start to see things differently. Now I stop having those thoughts about, gee, I really don't like Bill, or I really don't like this person or that person. I start seeing Bill as a child of God. I start seeing Dave Dote as a child of God. Yeah, Dave, that's an amazing thing, isn't it? We start seeing one another as children of God, and whenever we see others as children of God, we cannot be licentious or greedy or murderers or envious, because we want the best for the children of God, don't we? Now here's the hard part. This is the really hard part. How about when it's somebody who has totally offended us, and we could never, ever, ever, ever reach out to that person again? 9/11's coming up soon. Can we forgive? Can we reach out and say, you too are a child of God, and God can forgive you and does forgive you? That's hard. That's hard for me, so I know it's got to be hard for you. Just this week I was listening on the radio, and 71 people piled into this car, this refrigerated truck that was in Austria. I'm sure you heard this story. It's horrible. And they were going to freedom. They were immigrants. And by the way, whenever James tells us real religion is to care for the orphans and widows, he leaves off what the prophets always said. The immigrants were to take care of as well. That's not from Tim. That's from the Bible. And that's what God expects from us, to care for those who come to us. And so whenever these people piled into this refrigerated truck that was not equipped with oxygen inside, he locked the door, went across the border to take them to freedom, and when they got to freedom, he opened the door and 71 people lay dead, including women and children. These are people from Syria and Turkey. These are people who are leaving war-torn, devastated areas, trying to get to a country where they can have some freedom. And did this guy do the wrong thing? No, he was helping them. Was he an evil person? I wouldn't necessarily say he was an evil person. He was trying to help the people. But on the other hand, he was also causing the people to look toward him for all their faith. And he didn't deliver. And so what Jesus is really saying to these people today is, let's not put our trust in ourselves and in human beings. We fail one another from time to time, but God never does. God always shows up. God always shows up at this table, and that's why we focus on God. God always shows up at the font. That's why we turn around every week. It's not because it's just, oh, let's do this because we've done it for so long. Now it's a tradition. It's because we need to turn. We need to turn our lives back toward God, who has come to us again and again. And as we turn and look toward God, we know that that's where our salvation lay. We know that in God is our salvation, our redemption. And as we turn and we face this altar, we know that even at this altar with a little slug of wine and a bit of bread, we too will know God's presence in our very lives. Yes, they're traditions, but they also point to something greater than ourselves. They point to God's own divine self. And here's the kicker. You too are points of God's divinity, because you are God's children, and you go out into the world, and you, each one of you, let your light shine before Christ. And as you do that, you let others know of the presence of God in the world. So don't let those traditions rule your life. If we change something in the service from time to time, right, Marcia? We do change things every once in a while. Let's let it go. Let's go with it and see if we see God. And if we don't, then let's go back to the way things were. But let's see where we can go with this and see how God opens us up so that we might be able to see God in different ways each time we come into this place and each time we go out. Amen.